do whatever is necessary to support our friend and ally Belgium in bringing to justice those who are responsible. And this is yet another reminder that the world must unite. We must be together, regardless of nationality or race or faith, in fighting against the scourge of terrorism. We can and we will defeat those who threaten the safety and security of people all around the world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now is a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and three-time Republican presidential candidate, Alan Keyes. Mr. Ambassador, welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
All right, you recently wrote a piece, Will America's Way of Life Survive? It was not predicated on or focused on terror, certainly, but in that context, in the context of today, let me put that question right back to you, and also feel free to weigh in on a president who can't seem to muster any emotion and cannot say the words Islamic terror.
Well, this statement we just heard is coming from the same guy whose administration, almost the moment they took over, declared that there was no war on terrorism and that the whole idea should be removed from the parlance of the U.S. government. So we see and know where he's coming from. The war he's been concentrating on, sadly, I think, is the war against the Constitution and people of the United States, against our sovereignty, a war that actually has him facilitating the business of terror, both in his foreign policy and in the policy of importing illegal immigrants into this country as part of his sort of refugee program to help terrorists come to the United States and establish themselves so that they'll be poised to do us the kind of harm they are already doing as refugees in Europe. So I think it's absurd for him to be speaking in this way, and Americans need to remember that we have spent the last 8 years dealing with what I think is elements on both sides of the aisle that are more bent on destroying us than they are bent on destroying the sources of terrorism in the world.
Who on the Republican side, if anybody, and I think we've been down this road a little bit before, you and I, would protect America's way of life or get it back to where it was before Obama took over?
Well, frankly, I don't think either party has anything in its platform these days that's seriously taken seriously, or anything else that suggests that any of them would. They reject the basic principles of America stated in the Declaration of Independence. They have shown themselves to be totally without regard for the constitutional provisions on both sides of the aisle. So you have people who, in order to fight the war on terror, believe we ought to toss out all liberties for Americans. And we have people on the other side of the aisle who, in order to achieve their objectives, are willing to let Obama ignore the constraints on executive power and government power in general that the Constitution provides for. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's a serious will to preserve America's way of life, because if you discard the Constitution, discard the basic premises of respect for God-endowed rights that are in the Declaration of Independence and are the principles the Constitution's based on, discard those things, and you're not fighting for America's way of life. You're just fighting for the selfish interests of the elitist clique that you belong to, which has destroyed the American middle class in order to amass money and power for itself, and is now poised, I think, to overthrow our constitutional way of life.
I know the United Nations, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is fairly worthless. However, you served in that body as our ambassador. I mean, shouldn't a president at least go through the motions? Shouldn't the leader of the free world at least go to the United Nations, give a speech condemning ISIS, condemning radical Islamic terror, asking for some kind of Security Council or even General Assembly resolution which would echo those sentiments? Shouldn't at least something symbolic be done by a president of the United States? If the man you were serving under were in power right now, I mean, there'd be action, but wouldn't there also be symbolic action?
Of course. I think I beg to differ with people who suggest that Ronald Reagan and those of us who worked for him thought that the United Nations was simply worthless. The United Nations has its uses when it comes to defending and promoting the best interests and the principles and the good things that America stands for. And it is a forum in which you can declare what the standards ought to be for every nation in the world in fighting against terror, because every nation has an obligation to respect those natural human rights that come to us by way of our participation in humanity, according to our declaration, by the will of the Creator God. And that when you violate that premise, you are attacking humanity itself. You are destroying the ground on which every human being has the right to claim respect for the dignity that comes from the hand of God.
So you would like
Ronald Reagan was never remiss in going forward and articulating that.
And would you like to see, even though I know it would be a paper tiger of sorts and meaningless in a sense, would you like to see Obama do just that?
Well, I don't expect to see Obama do anything of the kind, since I'm one of those people who honestly believes that, consciously or not, this guy's committed to the wrong side of the terrorist equation. But leave that aside.
Mr. Ambassador, got to go. Always appreciate talking to you. Thank you very much. Alan Keyes. Give Me 5 is next, folks.